And the only way a wild week in the bond market could end is with a wild Friday. It was a wild morning in the bond market. MBS were down 2 basis points net early on, though it took 26 basis points of movement in both directions to get there. We're now back to 0 days without a systematic banking contagion flare-up. While there's not as much of an issue as something like Silicon Valley Bank's failure, a surge in Deutsche Bank CDS, which are credit default swaps, which if you remember those things were a big problem during the 2008 crash, got the market's attention overnight. A credit default swap plays out when a company defaults on its obligations. CDS spikes well before a company officially goes under, so a bunch of people overnight were betting on Deutsche Bank's failure. Deutsche Bank AG slumped 15%, the most since the early days of the pandemic in March of 2020. UBS Group AG shares also dropped as Bloomberg reported that it is one of the banks under scrutiny by the U.S. Justice Department probe as to whether financial professionals helped Russian oligarchs evade sanctions, according to people familiar with the matter. Domestic economic data came in. Market PMI came in a bit hotter, which was not helping the cause. Market PMI came in at 85.3 versus 47.5 forecast. It was 50 last time, so quite a bit higher. Durable goods orders fell 1% in February, excluding transportation. They were flat. Both numbers were below consensus. Core capital goods orders, a proxy of business capital expenditures, were flat. December Fed funds futures moved back to their recent lows, with 3.5 to 3 3/4 being the target rate. That is very contrary to what the Fed said yesterday. So the Fed funds futures are really banking on the fact that the Fed is wrong. St. Louis Fed President James Bullard spoke this morning. He refers to the current situation with the banks as similar to events in the past. Rising rates caused financial stress but didn't tank the economy. He mentioned the Mexican peso, Orange County crisis in the mid-90s, continental Illinois in the mid-80s, long-term capital management in the late 90s as examples. The labor market remains exceptionally strong. However, financial stress is increasing. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, we ended up being up 11 basis points at 101.22. So it's in that kind of red to blue line range right there at the bottom section of that. And that's how we end up for the week. One picture is worth 1,000 words, and here's a nice chart of the Fed fund futures to keep things in perspective. So the gray lines are different recessions and things like that. So you can see that as much as everybody's complaining about things, there is most of the time the Fed funds are quite a bit higher than they are now. So all these banks that don't plan for a higher Fed funds rate, you're just ignoring history. Also got news that home builder KB Homes reported first quarter numbers. Revenues were flat while gross margins contracted due to seller concessions and rising construction costs. Average selling prices rose 2% to $494,500. I guess this is part of the reason why builder sentiment keeps going down, although I would say that most mortgage companies right now would love to have things being flat instead of just continuously going down. Looking at next week, we got 2-year auction on Monday. We get Case-Shiller and FHFA home prices on Tuesday and a 5-year auction. Wednesday, we get a 2 and a 7-year note auction. Then final GDP number on Thursday, and then on Friday we get the core PCE inflation. So these things are all going to be leading. People are going to be looking at the housing data to predict how that's going to impact the PCE, which is going to give a read on inflation. We also get sentiment and consumer sentiment and 1 and 5-year inflation sentiment. So a lot of inflation data coming next week. Over the weekend, hopefully you can check out some of our common sources and influences, including WellThatMakesSense.com, where we got a great series going right now on the 31 rules of Peter Diamandis that make a lot of sense and a lot of things to think about to run your life by. Have a great weekend, everybody.